Good morning and welcome to the Vault Excel. This commentary is pertaining to John Bassett. He is standing trial in Knoxville, Tennessee for the gruesome murder of Desheena Kyle. Yesterday, he took the stand claiming that Miss Kyle put a gun to her head and shot herself, and that he panicked, cleaning up evidence, tampering with evidence, the state claims. I will put you that information. WBIR is the source.
Accused of murdering his longtime girlfriend took the stand today in his own defense. John Bassett is insisting that she held the gun. She put it to her own head and that it went off by itself or when she, not he, pulled the trigger. Bassett faces a first-degree murder charge in Desheena Kyle's June 2021 killing. Bassett says he panicked after Kyle died in her apartment. He admitted cleaning up blood, removing evidence, and wrapping her body in bags before hiding it for months under a vacant house on Sam Tillery Road. The prosecution says he deliberately killed Kyle because he feared she was pregnant. Authorities are seeking to put Bassett in prison for the rest of his life with no chance for parole.
All right, everybody, WBIR is the source of that information. Very interesting. One moment, please. I want to see if I can get more detailed commentary. Thank you all so much for joining me. I had done a little searching last week and I hadn't gotten any commentary about what was actually transpiring in court. And finally, something came up yesterday in the search. And once again, Channel 10 News is the source. Jury deliberates. Guilt of man accused of killing girlfriend, hiding her body under great-grandmother's house. So obviously, and I was assuming just from watching trials that if the defendant is testifying, then that means the defense has put on their case. So now it's about the jury getting the case awfully soon, 1 week. Let's dissect this information. John Bassett took the stand Tuesday and asked Knox County jurors to believe a long string of facts that fly in the face of common sense. Exactly. He testified the right-handed Desheena Kyle, 26, put a gun to the left side of her head and deliberately or accidentally pulled the trigger in June 2021 while backing up in a moment of duress. The 30-year-old told jurors, one second, jumped off there. This is absolutely hideous. The 30-year-old told jurors he then panicked, cleaning up blood in her apartment, ditching her phone, ditching the gun, hiding evidence, wrapping and binding her body in sections with duct tape and garbage bags before deciding some 6 days later on her birthday to hide her body in the crawl space of a Sam Tillery Road home once occupied by his great-grandmother. There's a lot I did, he testified. Yeah, okay. But he didn't kill her, he said. And as the months passed that summer, he never told anyone where she was or what happened to her. Knoxville police ultimately found her corpse stuffed in a toolbox under the vacant house since late September 2021. The jury started deliberations Tuesday afternoon before electing to go home and start anew Wednesday morning. Very interesting. Bassett is charged with first-degree murder, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence. If the jury convicts him, the prosecution wants them to proceed to a second penalty phase to determine if what Bassett did was so horrible that he should be held in prison for the rest of his life with no chance of parole. The defense argues Kyle could be mentally unstable and violent towards Bassett. She stabbed him once, they argued. In late 2020, defense attorney Josh Hedrick told jurors a family member called 911 fearful because Kyle was bipolar and threatening to harm herself. She had a history that suggested she was capable of suicide, he said. The jury could go ahead and convict him of tampering with evidence and maybe abuse of a corpse, said Hedrick, who represents Bassett with attorney Cullen Wolsick. But he wasn't guilty of murder, he said. Bassett told jurors when he took the stand Tuesday that Kyle woke him up in the middle of the night as he slept in her room June 19, 2021. She was upset and declared that he'd be happier if she just killed herself. He said the gun went off as she backed up against a chair and he lunged to try to stop her. Bassett said he couldn't let anyone know what had happened to her because no one would believe him. Well, guess what, John? I don't believe you. I don't think nobody believes you. He was a felon on probation for cocaine sale whose story would be dismissed by everyone, he said. Be realistic here, Hedrick told jurors in his closing argument. John's trying to hide. John's trying to find a way out. On cross-examination, prosecutor Rachel Hill started pulling at his testimony as if it were an Afghan of loose yarn. Oh, well said. Repeatedly, Bassett was unable to explain conflicts in his story or details about what he did after Kyle died. Bassett's testimony Tuesday consisted of lies, and more lies, Hill said. The prosecutor who tried the case with Joni Stewart reminded jurors that the medical examiner discounted the possibility based on medical evidence that Kyle took her own life. Use your common sense. Use the evidence we've shown you and find him guilty because he's guilty, she said. Channel 10 News is the source. At the bottom of this article, you will see one of the prosecuting attorneys holding a lime green fake gun, I would assume, to her head, and she's pointing it to the left side of her head. You heard in this commentary that Desheena Kyle was right-handed. Now, it is not to say that a person would never use their left hand to do anything, and I'm not trying to compare myself to this situation, but I know that over the years, I started to use my left hand to open things such as jars. Why? I don't know, but I do. But I would assume if I was to kill myself and I'm right-handed, I wouldn't use my left hand to kill myself. And that's always been brought up in evidentiary as evidentiary material when an attorney is refuting the fact that a person killed him or herself, because what they go by is the hand that's holding the gun at the time of death. And if a person is right-handed, one would assume he or she would use their right hand to shoot himself or herself, not their left, and vice versa. Last week, I brought you information from the trial about him renting a truck. So one would say, as I've brought commentary before, you have to ask yourself, did he go to the house in that truck? Or did he rent it after the fact? There's something here that's just bothering me and disturbing me. And I want to make sure I repeat it correctly because, sometimes wording can be distorted. About the 6 days, this is what makes no sense to me. And I want to reread this to you. Okay. He was there with her allegedly. She woke him up in the middle of the night, upset, and declared that he'd be happier if she just killed herself. One second, I'm trying to get to where to talk about the 10 days because this story is weird to me. This testimony, but that's expected because he's a pathological liar. And just watching him walk into the courtroom and sit down, there's something wrong with this kid. Okay, here he goes. He told the jury that he panicked, cleaning up the blood in the apartment, ditching her phone, ditching the gun, hiding evidence, wrapping and binding her body in sections with duct tape and garbage bags before deciding some 6 days later on her birthday to hide her body in the crawl space. Hello, Rhonda. This makes no sense to me. What do you mean 6 days later? See, I'd like to hear the testimony verbatim because I'm trying to understand this information that they're saying. Wrapped her up before deciding some 6 days later on her birthday to hide her body. So what are you telling me? She was in her apartment for that long? Or he took her out of there somewhere else for 6 days and then discarded her in the crawl space at the great-grandmother's house? I don't understand that. And I mentioned this in my commentary. If he broke out the bedroom window in the back and broke in, once again, that contradicts you waking up with her in her house. Stay woke. And I brought you an eyewitness who heard the crashing of the window, he and his girlfriend, the night she was murdered. Please check out my previous video that I uploaded last week. I went to the house of where she was discarded, and then I proceeded to go to the location where she lived and met some people who heard the crash that night. They lived on the second floor, she lived on the first floor. So why would her window be broke or breaking if you're there with her already asleep? See, Mr. Bassett, you're a fool. You're like most typical criminals who think they're going to bogart people with lies and mischievousness. You don't think. You're sitting before 12 people telling them you woke up in the middle of the night, but yet evidence shows that you rented a truck. So that's why I said, did you rent the truck before going to her house? You rented the truck to go to the house to kill her, or you killed her, hid her out in that apartment, or hid her somewhere else? I'm confused. And who watches a person kill him or herself, attempt to try to stop them, and then clean up their apartment because nobody would believe me because I'm a felon and blah, blah, blah. And you're good at hiding out because you hid out on an outstanding warrant after murdering Desheena Kyle. And then you walk in the courtroom looking like a little Teletubby. Boy, you've put on weight. They've been feeding you very well in Knox County Jail. That penal farm must got some good cornbread. Chubby, pants sagging. Really? 2 years later, you are swelter and walking in a court with your britches sagging, because I could see the shape of your tail through the shirt. I was looking like, what's going on here? Your lawyers didn't tell you should tuck your shirt in and pull your pants all the way up to your waistline? I'm just saying. And I didn't even recognize you on that witness stand versus that cute mugshot with your hair nappy and not combed. You look like two different people. Oh, and by the way, he has glasses on. Isn't it amazing how when people get arrested and they go to jail and or prison, when they decide to go to court, they're always in glasses. So that means you are walking around blind, selling drugs and beating up on a woman. You could see to do that, but you couldn't see your way to an eye doctor. Yeah, I'm being nasty this morning because the one thing criminals don't do is plan properly. And obviously, sir, they searched your phone and saw where you went into Google searching what happens to a person shot in the head if they're pregnant. I brought you information last week that the state says that Desheena Kyle wasn't pregnant. So obviously an autopsy was performed and she was not with child. So you're cleaning this woman's apartment. You hid 2 chairs. They said they had blood stains on them. Wrapping a girl body up in duct tape and bags. As I said, did you bring those items there or you use items that was already in her apartment? Did you have a key to her apartments? I'm trying to understand how nobody was keeping in contact or didn't even go by the house to check to see what was going on. Did anybody go there and knock on the door? Because naturally you can't see her bedroom from the front of the building. Her bedroom's on the back. But I think I would walk around the back if I was concerned that she was bipolar and or suicidal, as Mr. Bassett claims. So as I told people before, maybe she was suicidal at one point in her life, or even then, maybe she was bipolar, has mental problems. But did she kill herself on that night? The state says no, she did not. And even if she had those issues, You are a low-down dog to even use that in this case to try to get yourself from getting a life sentence. And how's it that you and your defense team thinking that you did not abuse the corpse? You did abuse the corpse, because here it's talking about a 6-day stint. So that means she was put somewhere or left somewhere, and then you took her and put her in that crawl space. That's why I said that the information was strange to me. Did he go there deliberately with the intent to kill her? Number one. Two, did he take a truck that was rented there deliberately to haul the body out of there? Because let's say he did break in from the backside. You still have to walk out the apartment. I'm not stupid enough to think he pushed her out of that broken window from the back. He had to have taken her out the front. So you would have had to already had, as I said, the truck and the toolbox already ready for disposal. Or you left her in there, happenstance, nobody ever came and got in to check on her. Or two, you carried her out in something and stored her somewhere else, and then stored her at your great-grandmother's house that's vacant. I don't even understand what I just read. I really don't. And that's why I don't like getting the information back without hearing it from the person, him or herself. Ditching her phone, ditching the gun, hiding evidence, wrapping and binding her body in sections with duct tape and garbage bags before deciding, some 6 days later on her birthday to hide her body in the crawl space of Sam Tillery Road home. So that's what I'm saying. Where was she during the 6 days? I know I can read a little bit. Wrapping and binding the body in sections, duct tape, garbage bags before deciding some 6 days later on her birthday to hide her body in the crawl space. So did they retrieve a gun? Because here it says he hid evidence. He ditched her phone, he ditched the gun, hiding evidence. These are the charges. Also abuse of a corpse. Hello, Pentan, everybody in the chat. Thank you for joining. So where was her body? Was it left in that apartment and nobody came by or had access to open the door? Did they call the landlord to ask to come in to check on her, make sure she's okay? As I told you, one of the neighbors said they hadn't seen her car. I don't know if that's true or not, because I don't like repeating things if I don't have any verification pertaining to where her car was at that time. But this is why this is a strange story, because if her car was gone, this is why I said, did he deliberately go there with a truck to dispose of her body? They have Google searches of him of looking up what happens to a body after death if the person is pregnant. Well, John, I think you should have common sense to know if she was pregnant and she died, then the baby would die. Whether it was first stages of conception, 6 months pregnant, 4 months pregnant, or 9 months pregnant. But once again, she was not pregnant. And the state is bringing you information that she was right-handed, but obviously shot from the left side. So you did that. You Google searched death and pregnancy because somehow you thought this young lady was pregnant. I don't know if she ever told you that or what made you think she was. Allegedly, you all were not together. You're sitting here in court claiming you were there in the room, but if eyewitnesses heard glass breaking, why would you be breaking out windows if you're inside of the apartment with the victim? Yeah, you two could argue, fuss, fight, but break out a window. And naturally, if you break out a window, you're going to be able to tell if it's been broke from the inside or the outside. So if you're inside, the glass is going to be on the ground outside. And if you're breaking in from outside, the glass is going to be on the inside. John, you are just as stupid as they come. Just a little sawed-off Teletubby up in court, spinning lies on a dead person. And as the coroner has said, no common sense, because why would this person kill themselves? And then you panicked, thinking people would think you did it, which that is what we're thinking. And you cleaned up the crime scene, hid evidence, and obviously hid a body, and then stored the body in a crawl space in a toolbox. And as I told people, I wanted to see this toolbox because as gruesome as it is, I just can't visualize it. And this information in this article is baffling to me. I need more details. I need to know how she was able to be brought out of the apartment, if indeed she was dead at the time that he brought her out. He brought her out in what? That toolbox or something else? And was she in there for days wrapped up dead? Or he brought her out immediately after killing her wrapped up, and he took her and hid her somewhere for 6 days and then discarded her at the great-grandmother's house on her birthday? I'm just trying to understand the information. And I'm not getting it from this article. Prayers to the Kyle family. This is disturbing to me. And the fact that you were going to court and defame this girl's reputation after death means this is what you did to her when she was living. And as I've always told people, when you listen at how people talk about people after death and how they treat a corpse after death, that shows you what they thought of the victim when they were living. And you have proven that you never cared for Desheena Kyle while she was living. That's why you murdered her. And no matter the reasoning, it doesn't make common sense because it was wrong. And what you did after the fact was wrong. A decent human being would dial 911 to say, hey, my girlfriend just shot herself. The evidence would have told on itself. But that's the whole point. They brought the evidence into court, and it is contradictory to what you're saying on the witness stand because she was right-handed. And 9 times out of 10, Lord have mercy. When the coroner performed the autopsy, they saw she didn't kill herself because they're going to check for gun residue, gunpowder, all that on the victim, where she was shot, on her clothing. And naturally, they couldn't check you at the time because you hit her body and you hid out. But see, God don't like ugly. You were arrested originally for drug charges and violation of probation for drug charges and having access to a gun as a felon. And then you were probed as a suspect in her disappearance. And then months later, she was found at this location, a dead relative's house that's dilapidated. And I would like to know just why. Why'd you kill her? You thought she was pregnant? You don't want to be a father? Well, due to what you've done to her, under the circumstances, you don't need to be somebody's father. You don't need to be anybody's anything. Friend, brother, cousin, parent, lover. Because imagine if she had been pregnant, had a child by you. You've shown that you don't have any self-control. So who would want to be, one, dating someone like you? Number two, have a child with you. Be married to you. You don't have any impulse control. And I'm surprised you don't have more on your criminal record if you're able to break into somebody's house and murder them and hide the body and the evidentiary material and then dump the person in a vacant house in a crawl space And, oh, I hid and did all this. Yes, because I knew that people would think I did it. Well, don't you find that interesting? They did. So you know yourself quite well. You were the subject in her disappearance. And all roads led to you, the very reason you are in custody. The jury got this case quickly. They're deliberating currently. They will resume court later today, which is Wednesday. And we will see what the verdict will be. And there will be a separate phase pertaining to the sentencing. The state is seeking life without parole. And Mr. Bassett does not deserve to walk free because sadly, if he is given a 20, 30-year sentence, whatever number, and he is freed, he would surely kill somebody else. And I can't see anybody wanting to be with a man that would wrap their girlfriend up, hide evidence, store out for a couple of days, and then dump her at an abandoned house. But lo and behold, there would be somebody that would say, well, he was young when he did that. He's different now. How can you be different if you are incarcerated for a long time? You hear that a lot from people. They're different. They've changed. They've dedicated their life to Christ. Well, see, the thing people don't understand about being incarcerated is that talk is cheap. Nobody's really going to know, including yourself, if you are born again or reborn or newborn into Christianity until you actually get out and walk the street and live. So saying you've changed inside doesn't count because you don't have the worldly goods and temptations at your feet, such as being in the streets, walking around, working, living with people, living around people, being in the community. It's not to say that you can't deal in illegal activities inside of a prison, fornicate in a prison, but your test is when you're free. And I wouldn't trust John Bassett free tomorrow, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. And you're going to have a hard time trying to live with that on your background. You didn't have an altercation with some dude and shot him, did 20 years and then was free, try to work a job and live happily ever after. You murdered a woman, you lied about it to the public, law enforcement, family, never said anything, wrapped her up and dumped her like trash. And then 2 years later, you have the nerve to stand in court and say, she killed herself. She was bipolar. She was suicidal. She was known to be violent. She damaged my property at one time. She did this to me, blah, 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 blah. But the dead's not here to defend herself. So you could say any damn thing. Even if there's arrest records pertaining to her violating your property or your person. It still doesn't count you breaking and entering. Wow. That's my said commentary by WBIR. Channel 10 is the source. It's a lime green gun, naturally a prop gun, obviously showing you that she's right-handed. She was right-handed. So obviously she was shot from the left side. And they're claiming that Mr. Bassett did it. And he stupidly took the stand trying to defend himself. But you see, he's a narcissist because I don't doubt his attorneys told him it's really not a good idea, sir. Because they're going to bring information that contradicts your version of events. And when you have versions such as a truck being at the site of the disposal site, the date and time that the truck was rented, so God forbid you rented it after you murdered her, then one would show that you murdered her first and then rented the truck. How long the body was out. They would try to pinpoint a date of her death. And now that's going to coincide with your Google searches. The ping of the truck at the location of the escarpment. your movements thereafter on your phone, what you were texting and talking to people about. The fact you hid her phone. Why would you hide her phone? Very interesting. Right-handed woman killed herself on the left-hand side. You panicked, cleaned up blood, ditching her phone, ditching the gun, hiding evidence, wrapping and binding her body in sections with duct tape garbage bags before deciding some 6 days later on her birthday to hide her body. So that means she was somewhere else, bound and duct taped, dead. So I'd like to know what she in her apartment did for 6 days or somewhere else. That's my commentary, everybody. I will bring you the verdict pertaining to John Bassett in the murder of Desheena Kyle. I do believe Mr. Bassett murdered her deliberately. I believe the searches that were found on his phone, that was his intent to rid himself of this lady and possibly a baby. And I believe he hid evidence, cleaned up the apartment, ditched the gun, her phone, whatever else, to show that he deliberately killed her. And once again, my prayers and condolences to the Kyle family. Praying for justice for Desheena Kyle. I will later bring you information to court proceedings pertaining to Jacqueline and Trezell West. Court resumed yesterday in that California court. And as most of you know, the state is rested, so the defense will do their best to try to bring you a rendering of what these two did not do against two small baby boys. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $ Big Angie, 129 Cash App. All stickers and chats are welcome during my live streams. I want to thank you all so much for following this network. Please check out my community board for said updates. Breaking news. I have some more content I'd like to bring to you later today, and I will try to get that information out before the day is over with. Once again, as most of you know, Ms. Lloyd Vallow has been found guilty in the murders of her children and the conspiring of Tammy Daybell. And I do believe she's on her way to face charges in Arizona for the murder of Charles Vallow, her previous husband. Very sad world we're living in. Please be aware of your surroundings. If you see something, say something. Be a part of the solution and not the problem. Mind the children. And when you go back in my library and listen to the content from the couple who heard glass crashing on that fateful evening and the craziness of them not being able to see anything and the attitude of the landlord at the time, manager, or whomever, they're not supposed to call police about this and that. Just imagine how stupid that is. Somebody telling you not to call 911 because you heard or saw something facetious in nature, suspect in nature. There's no way in hell somebody's going to tell me not to call the police pertaining to my own safety. And if I saw something suspect in nature, such as somebody being abducted, house broken into, car broken into, yes, I will call the police. I don't have to say, hi, this is such and such an apartment A, or my house is directly across. I wouldn't say anything. You just leave the information and keep it moving. Because as I said, you don't say anything, there may come a time when you will be that same person and you may not be so lucky to come out alive. And maybe your life could have been preserved had somebody called 911. I wouldn't even live in a place where the landlord and or management is telling me not to dial 911 in case of an emergency, to wait and call them. So I wonder how this person feels who used to be the manager. I don't know if they still have the same owner or not of the building. How do you feel now knowing this is advice you fed your tenants? to not call the police, just bring you the information and you'll handle it. Well, you can't handle the death of Desheena Kyle because she's dead. And frankly, one could say that's a suit. A person decided to use discretion to not call because of instructions from a stupid manager of an apartment complex. The manager said, don't call. Imagine that. Owner, they still have the same policy that you all are not in the same state as Miss Kyle was. And your life is in the balance of fighting off someone in your apartment, or they're holding a gun or knife to you. And there's ruckus and screaming and hollering. And somebody can hear and or see an altercation and they turn a blind eye and keep it moving. Just hope you're not ever in that situation. God forbid. Thank you all so much for listening. You have been listening to The Vault XL.